Welcome back to DC Today. The defund police debate rages on in Seattle following the headline-making protests in that city's now defunct CHOP zone. The mayor slamming calls to cut the police budget by half, instead opting for a smaller cut of $78 million that would be redirected to other areas. That doesn't go as far as most council members and community activists are calling for. Goode, CEO of Seattle-based Choose 180, is at the forefront of these history-making conversations. He says, put that money towards programs that offer change and a second chance to young and adult offenders. Sean, welcome to DC Today.
What's an honor. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Let's talk about your journey and how your journey began with this type of work.
Well, in earnest, my first engagement with the criminal legal system was as a 6-year-old boy. See, my brother, when he was 13, was arrested and found guilty for a behavior that had him locked up until he was a 21-year-old man. And the earliest memory I have of my brother is visiting him inside of that juvenile rehabilitation facility. And because he was locked up, I wasn't able to create any new memories with him until he was released as an adult.
So you spent the better part of your life dedicated to this work. And let's talk about the organization that you founded a number of years ago, because this isn't something new to you. Everybody is saying in this moment, we are having these deeper conversations about race in the criminal justice system and police brutality and George Floyd. But you've been doing this work for quite a while. What is it that your organization does to help folks who may have been steered the wrong way?
Yeah, well, the work began in 2011. I joined the cause in 2016 after doing years of work in supporting young people in at-risk communities, from employment work to gang intervention work. And one of the things that's incredibly unique about what it is we do at Choose 180 is we partner with systems like district attorneys, and we work with them to undo the harm that they've done by supporting the young people who have been negatively impacted by their systems. So essentially the way our work functions in large part is young people who have their behavior criminalized. It's adolescent behavior, things like getting into fights and stealing, things that kids will always and have always done, but because their neighborhoods are over-policed, because they're black and brown, it turns into a criminal behavior. And when their behavior is criminalized, our district attorney, instead of sending them through the court system, sends them right back to the community. And as an organization, we get the opportunity to help them pause, pivot, and commit to a new direction for their life. We serve, almost 500 youth and young adults a year, and 90% of them that engage our programming don't return to the criminal legal system within 12 months of working with us.
You know, that's a very good success rate. Let's talk about Seattle.
Yeah.
Not that Seattle was never on the map before, but it really was put on the map because of the protests, the CHOP zone. It was first the CHAZ zone. Can you explain to folks around the country that may not be familiar with Seattle and why the protests here? Why did they garner such huge headlines?
Well, I think a couple things. Number one, for folks that don't know, Washington State is approximately 3% African American. King County, where Seattle is about 6% African American. So if that CHOP or CHAZ zone was really full of black folks who were protesting, we know good and well that it would not have had the staying power that it did. But as a result of the wealth of white folks who were advocating on behalf of the black community, it existed in some form or another for several weeks. It really consisted of several blocks. It really is not a big part of the city. And nor did many people feel like it fully captured the Black Lives Matter movement or the whole intent of what it is that we aspire for as a black community nationally, but certainly regionally.
So now that CHOP has been dismantled, what's the conversation now? What is it that your organization is prepared to do? And do you believe, because the debate now about defunding the police is getting louder and louder, is that where your organization can really step in and say, hey, look at us, we are an alternative and a good one?
Yeah, you know, we are one of several alternatives here in the Seattle area. There's prophetic voices like Nikita Oliver, who really stepped up and began to coordinate folks around defunding police and that conversation around divestment. And I think, something our county did that was important was it declared racism as a public health crisis. And so what I've been explaining to people is that if racism isn't truly a public health crisis, then we need to divest from the very things that perpetuate racism throughout our community. And law enforcement is one of those things that perpetuate and spread the disease of racism. So we certainly have to divest from it. And we also know that law enforcement doesn't keep crime from happening, and that there's neighborhoods that aren't policed at all, called suburban neighborhoods, that don't benefit from the presence of police whatsoever. So if there's a proven case that police don't have to be present in order for crime not to occur, and that what community really needs are the necessary supports, economic mobility, employment, access to healthy foods, groceries, education, all that can be supplemented with social services and intentional resourcing of people, and not by militarizing neighborhoods in an effort to keep people from behaving in deviant ways.
Okay, Sean, stay with us because, again, this debate is raging on, and I want to hear from you. What do you think is going to happen next? Let's start with what's going to happen in Seattle, and tell me if this is going to be a model for other larger cities. So stay with us, everyone. More with Sean when we come back.
Thank you.